guys, Kimberly here. Welcome back to my channel as I talk to you about awakening, ascension, and the upcoming event. And what it means to those of us who have been waiting for this day for a long time. It's why we incarnated here in the first place. It's why we chose to, take on so many dramas and traumas in our own lives and past lives in order to clear and heal them. And the effect that has on everyone around us. In the first episode, I had an introduction, and then I had episode 1. We covered a little bit about the domains that there's a theory that talks about how our entire solar system is traveling through a grand cycle, 25,000 year cycle, which is foretold in pretty much all 36 major world religions and spiritual teachings, including the Mayan calendar that ended in 2012. And really what that is there's an energetic domain that we're entering into that is changing our sun and the planets within our own solar system, and that will have a huge impact and effect. I'm going right now and talking about the scientific changes that are taking place, and after this episode, I'll get more into the spiritual implications and what that means for us as far as what's going to happen. How are we going to see it play out in our world, in our lives, politically, personally, and everything else. So that will be in upcoming events. So we're just going to go quickly over some things here. Again, my primary source for information is David Wilcock, his work here in some of his books that I've read, as well as his channels. And I have read other people as well, but I just have to say that by far his explanation and his description of what's happening and what's taking place makes the most sense to me. It resonates. And then again, it also has, I've had my own channeling and information that has come in and kind of provided me some more answers and insights as I've asked specific questions, and we'll get into that later. So here's some things that are happening as we're entering into this 6,000 degree area, actually higher than 6,000 degrees of helium, mostly helium particles that are in this area that the NASA scientists, silly name for it, they call local fluff. And this, for one of the things that's happening is that it's completely changing our Earth's magnetosphere. Not Earth, we have a magnetosphere too, but it's changing our solar system, our sun's and our solar system's magnetosphere. So the magnetosphere is, basically created primarily by the sun and its gravitational and magnetic force and field around it. And it, scientists like to draw it as kind of like an oval or oblong shape as we're headed through, movement through our galaxy around the central sun of our galaxy. And that may have been the shape of it before, but it's completely changed shape. And in fact, they would say, well, it has, this one area out here, and I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but, kind of like an area of protection that's out in front of the magnetosphere and so on. And now they're realizing that doesn't even exist as we're entering this incredibly energetic, highly magnetic, and very hot area of local fluff that is really truly there because it's at a conjunction point of sacred geometry, where this area actually is being energized from the central sun of our galaxy. So as we're entering that, there are changes that are happening to our sun. First of all, more activity on the sun in the last 75 years since 1940 than there's been in the entire previous 1,150 years, which is actually a 1,200 year cycle if you add those together. Which is one of the smaller cycles within the grand cycle than before. Mercury here's what I'm going to be talking about here is changes within the planets within our solar system. So you hear a lot about, Earth changes and climate change and global warming and all of that. And the story that's being told us is actually completely a complete fabricated story in order to cover up the truth. Yes, we are polluting our planet. Yes, it's bad for us to be burning fossil fuels. I'm very much against that, especially when there's free, abundant energy everywhere that we're not being allowed to harness and use. So that's a complete travesty. But the very same people who are foisting that on us are also foisting a false narrative about why the Earth is going through change, global climate change right now at this time. So because it's also happening to all the other planets in their solar system, and I don't think, last I've known, that people are living on those planets and polluting it with, burning of fossil fuels. So we have the sun activity, and there's many, many more. This is just a brief description. We can go far more into it. I highly recommend just get on Gaia.com, subscribe. I'm not getting any money for sending you over there if you haven't. Start watching David's most recent season of Wisdom Teachings, because he actually is starting to go into all of this, which is great because his episodes, there's 250 some episodes. It's a lot to watch and take in, but he's kind of almost starting back at the beginning in a more succinct and more direct, and I think that what he'll be accomplishing in like basically one season is an overall outline that I'm just bringing you really, really briefly here in a couple of episodes, but which he has taken hundreds of episodes to explain so far. So Mercury, we have ice forming at the poles. You guys, ice at the poles of Mercury. Mercury is the closest planet to the sun, and we think of it as a very, very hot place, and yet ice is starting to form at the poles. Very strange. And all of this, again, was within very recent amount of times. This is NASA. This is information straight from NASA themselves. Venus is 2,500% brighter than it was 30 years ago. Did you guys catch that? 2,500% brighter than just 30 years ago. I was a kid when Venus was dim compared to it is now. Mars, we have huge, I skipped Earth, but you guys are pretty familiar with changes that are happening on Earth, so we're going to skip that one. Mars, we have huge storms, and atmosphere is starting to build, and ice is melting. So here we have ice melting at the poles, there we have our ice forming at the poles. Very strange. Then we've got Jupiter that's 200% brighter, among other things. Also, the big storm on Jupiter has experienced significant change. There's so much more that I'm just showing here. This is just in a nutshell. Saturn, there's been a decrease in the jet stream, the speed of the jet stream. There's some more things I didn't write up here. Also, with X-rays emitting from the area of the jet stream, like in really like major pulses and spurts, which is very strange. We have Neptune that's 40% brighter, and then we have Pluto that's 300% increase in their atmospheric pressure, and something else that I didn't write here that I've heard him say before is there's actually an atmosphere forming on our moon. On our moon, very small, very thin. It's not enough for anybody to go out and live in, but there is a small atmosphere forming on our moon. So a lot of very strange things are happening as we're entering this 6,000 degree area called the local fluff. So let me get into where I want to go here. The heliosphere is completely changing, and the band that is out in front of our heliosphere is far hotter than expected and way more magnetic. And one of the things that is happening, instead of this being told to all of us and being made open and known, there's one NASA scientist who actually in his own, and I didn't write down the name of who this is, but he wrote some papers about this stuff, and then he states there's a persistent pernicious bias among NASA scientists and NASA in general as an organization against any information that points to the fact that the heliosphere is undergoing any changes due to our entrance into this hot magnetic area called local fluff. So they're not talking about it. They don't want us to know, and they're specifically holding back any connection of all of this data. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here, like it's evident and it's acknowledged, but they won't let people put together the pieces and then let that information get out to the main public. So some of the sun activity that's just really been crazy, as you guys know, solar flares, it's all about this, that from 1989 and forward, the flares just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and have been some that were so huge, they were basically like a billion-ton plume of superheated plasma that hits the Earth, and this is called a CME, or coronal mass ejection, and some of these ones that have hit the Earth are 30 times the size and mass of our own Earth in light, literally hitting the Earth. No wonder there's been a lot of changes that have been going on. And it's not like CMEs are have never existed before. They that happens throughout time. Like, whether it's at the junction of the 25,000 year cycle or not, these are happening, but they're peaking in a massive scale during this time. So one of the things that also is happening, and this is really crazy, NASA has no explanation for why this is the case. Normally, before the changes that we've been seeing basically since the late 1990s, and though before that time, it would take approximately 2 to 4 hours for a CME, the energy from a CME to hit Earth. But in 1989, that really big one, it took only 15 minutes for it to hit Earth. There is no explanation at all for the current scientific model to explain why this occurs. They're just sitting there saying, we don't even know. We don't know why, instead of it taking 2 to 4 hours, the exact, this huge explosion of the CME ends up hitting our Earth, with the light within 15 minutes. So what's interesting, that's 200 times faster, by the way, than ever before. What's interesting is that you actually can explain this if you go by David Wilcock's model of everything being connected by basically what's called an ether. And a long time ago, I mentioned this in my other video, back in the 1800s, scientists started realizing that there must be some kind of connection. There's a way that things are connected energetically that we can't see, and because they were seeing evidence for this connection, which of course we know now, lots of scientific studies are showing that things are connected, but we still don't have a theory that explains why. And David Wilcock's theory, basically, it goes into great detail over many episodes that explains what that really is, and it's based on sacred geometry of what we might call like an ether that's everywhere. It's like a web, and that web literally allows things to pop, to go from one place and then pop into another place instantly, or very rapidly. And one of the things that, because space, there's no atmosphere in space, so that's why light is going to only travel at a certain speed in space. In order for it to travel faster, it would need to have matter for it to go through. As soon as it hits an atmosphere, it can speed up. But with the theory that there actually is an ether, and that it's changing, the ether itself is changing as we're entering this highly energetic state, would explain why it could actually go faster. So I have some more notes here about a lot of different electrical storms. I'm not going to go into that, but you can certainly look that up for yourself. So at this point, I just looked up at my clock, it's 12:12. At this point, I want to talk just a little bit more then about what really is taking place at the event. I'm just going to kind of jump ahead. All of this was about was to show the science behind it, and that we're really truly entering a place where, basically in a nutshell, in the most simplified terms, light energy is hitting our Earth at thousands of times more than normal. And that light energy is coming through from the central sun of our galaxy, and also lining up with energy from the universe as well. And I'm going to go back into the 36 different world religions and spiritual teachings that teach about something called I'm trying to think if I should call it the event, the Ascension. Well, just the event. We're right here. Talk about the event in the Bible. It's called the Second Coming of Christ. In the Hindu teachings, they call it the Kali Yuga, and the Kali Yuga is like the energy. It's mostly, in most of these traditions, it's talked about as light energy. Even in the Bible, it talks as lightning shines from the east unto the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. And it's described as a river of light in the Hindu teachings. Again, I'm not going to go into details of that. You can do research on that yourself. So this has been taught. And here's the thing. The fact that all of these different world religions and spiritual teachings have this information is very interesting, because historically we know that most of these religions popped up on their own. Not very many of them were born of another older religion directly. Often they were popping up in completely separated places on our planet at different time frames within the last 10,000-12,000 years, and were passed down, some of them more recently, even as recently as the teachings of Christ 2,000 years ago. And so this information would, if you really go into it, you'll see that the people who talk about it say somebody came and taught us. Like there were some beings, they might call them gods, they might call them angels, there's different, maybe a prophet or whatever. And they were receiving this information from beings who were not, who received it from somewhere that was like, they brought it. Christ, of course, was born as a baby in a manger, to a Jewish mother and father, but he, was divinely inspired to have, the information that he got. Where in other cases, if you really read the information that's being told, you actually see that they're talking about an extraterrestrial or an angelic being or an extraterrestrial who came to teach that information. And it was really always important for humanity to know and to understand what we're headed toward, because it is the culmination of our experience in the third dimension. Now, one of the most, I think, valuable sources of information about the event is from the Law of One material. Now, you can actually look this up online. I think it's lawofone.org. And you can read all of it yourself. I actually have read through I've read through all of it myself. And it doesn't all deal with the event, but a lot of it does. And the parts that do, I found the most fascinating, because it just seems like it's so relevant to what we're experiencing now and from my own experience. And so I'm going to be talking now more like, what does this mean as far as all of this light coming in and how it's changing, making a physical change? How does this affect us on a personal level? Well, one of the things that's always emphasized within all of the world religions, and then also in the Law of One, is that the primary changes that we see, other than physical, but physical kind of comes afterward, the initial primary changes that we see are a change in consciousness. And that really makes sense to me, because those of you who are watching my channel, and for myself, the reason we're even here today right now together is because we ourselves have gone through an incredible change and shift in our own consciousness. We left behind all kinds of teachings and ideas and belief systems that we came out of, or maybe we didn't have any belief systems really at all, and then we've discovered beliefs and understandings on a very deep personal level. And it's been completely transformational for us. And I would also like to, perhaps you guys could make comments below, but I've also had physical changes occur, in correspondence with the consciousness change. Now, actually this is really weird, but I've even started looking in the mirror and thinking, I don't know if I'm aging anymore, or maybe I'm even looking younger. I don't know. Maybe it's wishful thinking. But certainly physical changes, such as I don't get sick like I used to. And when I do get sick, it's kind of odd. The things that will happen, like, recently I had a skin flare-up of really, really bad contact dermatitis. And that's just really strange. I have always had a little bit of a sense of skin, but not something like, that happened in this way. And of course, then when I do go into it and talk about it, with my higher self, I do understand, like, it is one of these symptoms. So the consciousness shift does come first.